Good afternoon. 506 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Brand new information out about how President Trump got shot on Saturday, what the Secret Service knew, what they didn't, what they were doing, what they weren't doing. A briefing that the Biden administration has just given to United States senators has revealed the following information from Punchbowl News. One, the shooter visited the rally site a few days in advance to scope it out in Butler, Pennsylvania. 62 minutes elapsed between the time the shooter was photographed as being suspicious and when he fired the shots. 20 minutes elapsed between the time he was spotted by snipers and when he fired the shots. And FBI Director Christopher Wray says there's no known foreign nexus, but no established motive as of now. Shooter was using encrypted comms and had little to no social media presence. Let me just make an obvious point. If you're using any form of communication, but in order to use encrypted communication, you would have to be communicating with someone. Who is he communicating with in an encrypted format? For more on this subject, Tony Shaffer joins us now. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. He's a resident of the London Center for Policy Research the president of the London Center for Policy Research and a CIA-trained former senior intel officer. Sir, good to have you with us.
Hey, Vince, always great to join you, and a member of law enforcement in Virginia. I work for Sheriff Dave Decatur down in Stafford, as you know, as my security advisor. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, irrelevant for this segment. But also, your resume is too long for me to share every time you come on. We don't have time for that. Hey, tell me, first and foremost, I want to get your reaction to this breaking news. 20 minutes elapsed between the time that the Secret Service snipers spotted this guy and he fired on President Trump. By that point, President Trump had been speaking for 6 minutes. In other words, Tony, they had time to stop Trump from going on stage, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, and especially with some of the new information regarding the Butler County Sheriff's Office, too. Those officers apparently did observe someone on a roof in an uncontrolled area or outside the primary perimeter, and they didn't radio it in, even though they had a common tactical shared line. So, by the way, new piece from CNN from John Miller, former NYPD intelligence commissioner. According to him, the parents called in to the sheriff's department saying, hey, something's up with my son. So
ahead of the shooting, they called in because they were concerned about their kid. They said, we don't know what's going on, but they thought it was enough of a concern that they needed to call the cops.
Yeah. And so, again, my experience is, I've had direct experience. Sheriff Decatur actually assigned me as an armed member of a protected detail when Terry McAuliffe visited his county. I've seen this from the inside. I attended 2 weeks ago, or 2.5 weeks ago now, the Chesapeake, Virginia event as a VIP with President Trump.
Yeah.
I can tell you for a fact that event that Governor Youngkin was at as well, there were overlapping and continuous security measures and patrols. People were walking around. Law enforcement were all over the place. Oh, by the way, helicopter overhead.
Right.
So I'm just looking at what I've seen regarding the positive examples of local law enforcement working with Secret Service and scratching my head, Vince, on how we have been told now in great detail, authentic detail. This isn't some left-wing or right-wing publication. These are credible outlets saying that there were massive overlapping failures, and I think that's what we all need to have answers to.
So if I'm in Butler County, Pennsylvania, I'm a parent, and I'm freaked out. This is not a juvenile. This is a 20-year-old man, right. And I'm freaked out about my son. So freaked out that I call the police and I say, hey, I think this is a problem. My kid's gone. I don't know. We don't know at this hour what was actually said to the cops. But wouldn't that raise a red flag immediately for law enforcement in the area in light of the fact that President Trump was in town? And it's not just President Trump. Jill Biden also had an event in the Pittsburgh area as well. So presumably, if you're getting a call about a 20-year-old man in kind of bizarre circumstances, wouldn't you want to alert cops hey, this is the kind of guy you may want to be on the lookout for?
You would have done at least what I would call a BOLO, a be on the lookout alert. Because to your point, while a normal event of a kid or a young adult going missing or being called in would be, we should look at that if we get a chance. But because you had a heightened alert and a heightened security environment where an alert like that would have been used to all the different deputies, all the different police officers. And again, Vince, they had a common operating channel they could have shared. And just with a description of the kid going out saying, hey, be on the lookout for an individual matching this description. Well, apparently they did observe this kid coming through security with a rangefinder. Vince, I've been around the military, Yeah, it's like a rangefinder is not a common item you find on anybody, let alone being brought through security at an event such as the Trump rally.
Well, he went through 3 hours before the event, approximately 3 hours, they say. And Secret Service typically mans the metal detectors. They have people from the Secret Service manning the magnetometers. He walks through and they say he had a rangefinder on him. Now, one would assume that and they said he's fine. He was fine to go in with the rangefinder. They cleared him in, and then he walked around inside the secure perimeter, and then he left again, and they claim that there was in that intervening time he went and he retrieved his gun, obviously. I would assume that if you pop up with a rangefinder as you're walking through the metal detectors, that somebody who's standing there is going to say, why do you have this?
Yes.
And I have not seen any report about a conversation or anything to that effect. Have you?
No. Again, that's alerting behavior. Alerting behavior is something you take deadly serious, even if it can be explained away, Vince. And again, I cannot explain for the life of me the inherent loss of curiosity by people on the spot whose job is to protect the president, protect the attendees. And for something like this, an item of interest, which is benign enough, it technically can't do anything to hurt anybody. It is a tool that's used for a specific task. That task is shooting. So that right there should be something that people are alerted to and act on.
We can recognize this with drugs. If you're carrying a crack pipe, we kind of know what that's for. But so the guy's walking in, he's got the rangefinder with him. And I don't know. I mean, are these rangefinders? I've never used one. Are they magnifying? Is it the kind of thing that someone might use as a visual aid, just like in lieu of binoculars?
No, what you do is you use it to establish and confirm ranges.
Yes,
essentially, you put it up, you look at it.
I get that. Yeah, I get that. My point. The question I'm asking though is, could you also use it as a way to enhance an image? Because if you're staring through it, does it make it bigger?
Some can, but most don't. And I think the one I have not seen the one they used or it was alluded to, but something that's kind of hand portable, probably not. It would give you essentially the ability to judge the specific range necessary to shoot a weapon with a specific amount of understanding what the ballistics of that round will be.
Okay. So he's got this rangefinder. We have no indication, so I would assume it actually didn't happen, that anybody asked him why. They apparently documented that they had it. And then he's suspicious enough that they've taken multiple photos of him. There's photos taken of this guy all the way up to the lead up of the event. And is that also standard? I mean, that you take pictures of someone, but you don't ask them questions? If they're suspicious enough that you're photographing them, wouldn't you think that a law enforcement officer should approach him and begin questioning him, at least on a very basic level? Hey, what brings you here? What do you got in the bag? What's your name? Where are you from? Do you have any identification on you? Anything like that?
Exactly. Once you're in an area which is considered a secure area or secure zone, you have that right to walk up and engage them. And then what you do as an officer of any flavor is you look for what we call alerting behavior. Now, Vince, someone in that circumstance where they're going to probably be kind of on edge, a little bit of adrenaline going, he's going to show something to you. And that's where you either make a decision that, this kid's only here, he's a knucklehead, he's being stupid, or you figure out that there's something more going on, and then you track him. Anyway, you track him, no matter what.
There's video.
Keep an eye on him.
There's video of him wandering around by himself by the perimeter of the site.
Right.
It's so suspicious that members of the crowd are literally just filming him. This is him walking around on the ground, looking like he looks like kind of like a deranged homeless person, just like walking around the perimeter of the edges. But again, if the crowd's suspicion is raised, and I would assume that by and large the crowd is not trained to look for, quote, alerting behavior, then why wasn't law enforcement all over this guy? I guess that's the question I keep having.
Yeah, and again, my experience is the people I've worked with, you would instantly have someone walk up to him and say, "Excuse me, sir, what are you doing here? Can I see some ID?" You have that right. And if he gets squirrely, so I don't have to show you ID. It's like, Okay, well, we're going to have to ask you to go now because we consider this area secure. We will be happy to escort you off. And by the way, the whole idea here, Vince, is that, you don't know what's in the mind of someone acting suspiciously. But what you have to do is two things: establish, if possible, if they're a threat, and if they're just simply a distraction that prevents you from doing your job to maintain security, you can ask them to leave. You can say, I'm sorry, you need to be either in a secure area or off the premises now. This is all done on an area where, again, law enforcement had that right. He did not have an inherent right to be there. So law enforcement could have engaged him, asked him hard questions, and done something about his presence.
So I'm curious if you have a sense of how this works. We've talked to law enforcement sources that tell us that it's an unusual event to have a Secret Service run it because the Secret Service has its own encrypted communications channels. There's some question about just how far-reaching the comms are for a local police officer to be able to communicate with everyone there who's in law enforcement, both federal and local. But we have this story of these two local Butler cops, one apparently boosting the other up to the roof where the shooter was. The cop that rises on the edge of the roof, grabs it with both hands, looks over it. The rifle's pointed at him. These are all what local officials are claiming. He then ducks and falls off the roof out of fear for having his head blown off in that moment. Both of those cops land on the ground, and they both grab their radios and begin instantly radioing in that they've got a shooter on the roof. Who hears that? Do we have a clear answer to that at this hour, Tony Shaffer? Does the president's protective detail hear that call out such that they have a chance to run up and shield the president of the United States?
The answer is we don't know what time, because the Butler spokesman was asked about that today. In one of the interviews I saw, he was specifically asked what was the time between them falling off the roof and making the call. He didn't have that information. And of course, incidental then to the event itself where the shots happened. But this is the solution. When you know that someone has a weapon within 150 meters of the president, you do something. You either start, you go back and re-engage and put down what I would call covering or withering fire. Let me tell you, Vince, you've been to these events. The moment a shot goes off, they're going to jump on the president. That's where I fault them again. If you know someone's with a weapon on a roof, getting ready to do something, maybe you should do something extraordinary to raise an alert. That's what I find extraordinary here. Nobody did that.
Even if they didn't know,
suspicions are high.
Even if they didn't know he had a gun, because I'm not clear at this point.
Oh, they knew. Well, I think they did. They said he pointed the rifle at him. The moment that they acknowledged that.
No, I got that part. I got that part. But I mean, the snipers were now told, based on this Senate briefing, had eyes on this guy for at least 20 minutes. They were staring at him for 20 minutes straight before he started shooting. I don't know, as they're staring at him, if they can see the gun. It may be just beneath the roof line or whatever. But if he's so suspicious that you're staring at him for 20 minutes straight, you don't let Trump up there on the stage. You send somebody over to figure out what the hell's going on, because that's a massive security threat that somebody's in a position with a clear line of sight to the stage outside of the magnetometer checked perimeter.
Right. And there's technology that's supposed to be able to do over the horizon or difficult to see things. It's called drones. Imagine that. The drone unit, for some reason, Vince, wasn't there. Why was this highly expensive new technology, which has been used very effectively, not present? Send a drone over. Just have him take a look. My son, for God's sake, has a drone he could use to fly over with great clarity, because it's a high performance drone. You can see what that kid has on him or not without having to actually put someone up there, or a helicopter, which was present at the Chesapeake event a couple weeks ago. So clearly, they were not using the tools, techniques, and technology available and necessary to maintain security of that area. And again, Vince, that's why everybody's asking questions about how could they have allowed this to be so badly managed.
It's all so crazy. It's too crazy. Yep. And I'm nervous about all the answers that come next, because it's just making me more and more horrified by what we're seeing. Tony Shaffer, thank you very much. Good to have you with us today.
Always, Vince. Thank you, Vince.
Okay, let's take a call here. Keith Stafford, line 7. Keith, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, so in reference to the radio thing, I've heard a few calls saying that most of the time everyone's on the same frequency.
Yeah.
When you have multiple agencies, each agency stays on their own frequency to include the specialty units from their main officers. and there's a relay hub where all information gets fed back and then fed back the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is when there's chaos on the radio, you can't get on the radio because your channel only allows one at a time. So even in subtle things when it's not chaotic, it's hard to get radio time. But when stress hits, it's almost impossible to get on the radio, which would delay everything. As far as the footprint on it, Secret Service, you could see, obviously only gave a few bodies, but the locals, no one knows what their training level is for events like this.
Yeah.
So it's a multiple failure on them. And also, to your magnetometer thing, do we know if that was actual Secret Service working it, or did they contract that out to unaudited?
I don't know. I just made an assumption, but you're right. It could have been a contractor.
And also, if he went back out to get his gun, that means he messed the security zone. So how come he didn't go back through the magnetometer coming back in?
Because he shot from outside of the security zone. He was inside of the control of a controlled area, but outside of the magnetometer controlled area.
Oh, okay, so they really shrank down that area. So yeah, you could tell there's, even for people that don't involve it in security, they can see the flaws on it. For those who've done it before, it's asinine. So,
I have to say though, it's making me think of one other thing, and Julie Gunlock just reminded me of this. Remember when the Key Bridge went down earlier this year? The ship contacted the port, and the port contacted the local police, and the local police stopped all traffic going across the Key Bridge in under 2 minutes flat. They moved with incredible speed, and they saved a lot of lives. The road crew that was on the bridge did lose their lives, but they were the only ones. All the traffic stopped. It can be done. If things can move quickly. And here we're talking hours of time where this guy is casing the joint, and he ends up shooting President Trump, and they didn't stop him from going on that stage. We're still awaiting so many answers there. Stay with us. I've got a lot more to get to. Good afternoon to you. 5:36 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Very much looking forward to a number of the speeches coming up at the Republican convention. We're expecting Peter Navarro today, just out of prison, having been thrown there by the Biden administration. Do you think the Biden administration realized what they were doing when they were going to set the release date for now? Whoops, right in the middle of the Republican convention, he'll come out, talk about his political imprisonment. I'm sure it'll be good. He's a smart guy. And we will try our best to have Peter Navarro on. We always like talking to him. It's been some time. He's been a little occupied. Also, looking forward to J.D. Vance's remarks. Senator J.D. Vance speaking tonight, now as the running mate for President Trump. It feels like just yesterday we were doing the Veep stakes questions forever. Who's going to be the running mate? Who's going to be the running mate? And President Trump himself. I asked President Trump this, didn't I? I'm trying to remember if we asked him. Pretty sure I did. And I think one of his answers, at least the answer his campaign was giving was, it doesn't really matter. It's, people choose the guy at the top. It doesn't really matter who he picks. But I really like the J.D. Vance pick. I think it's really good. And you can confirm that judgment by looking at how angry the left is about it. They are furious about J.D. Vance. And it wasn't a lot long ago they were pretending like they love J.D. Vance. The left used to love J.D. Vance. Hillbilly Elegy. Hollywood loved him. They made a whole movie about his book, his life, his upbringing. And now they want to destroy him. That's typical. That's what they did to Dr. Ben Carson, too. Remember Dr. Ben Carson? They glorified him. They talked about how great he is. Such an example for so many. Brilliant brain surgeon. The second he jumped into Republican politics, they're like, he's an idiot. What a dummy. But honestly, they were. If you go back and you look at the coverage of Ben Carson and the way the left treated him once he entered politics, they treated him like he had a below room temperature IQ. The way they should treat Biden, actually. But that's how they treated Ben Carson to this very day, to the extent that they talk about him at all. And it used to be glowing, Not anymore. Speaking of a guy that with a book and a Hollywood movie, Ben Carson, gifted hands. Amazing. He was played by Cuba Gooding Jr. in the movie. This is not a small deal. Now they, of course, want to destroy him. And it's all politics. It's all politics for these guys. Also looking forward to Tucker Carlson's remarks tomorrow. He's set to speak. he, as I understand it, here's the knowledge I have on Tucker's address. Tucker's a dear friend. I used to work for Tucker for many years. He might be the only speaker who will not be using a script for his address. No teleprompter. And at this hour, I don't think he has some sort of specific speech in mind. It's going to be a classic Tucker Carlson address. So he'll get up there and let her rip. So we'll see what Tucker has to say when he addresses the RNC tomorrow. Kind of fun. So I'll be just as interested as you are. What is he going to talk about? And he always does a good job. One of the finest extemporaneous speakers ever. Just one of the best ever. And then President Trump will be speaking tomorrow. He'll be, of course, addressing, this is the big night, Thursday night. President Trump accepting the nomination. He's going to step forward with a speech that they have already telegraphed. He's said as much, and certainly we were talking to Caroline Sunshine from the Trump campaign earlier. It's a speech about America, certainly, obviously, and a speech about unifying the country, bringing the country together, getting us all on the same page, and supporting a Trump presidency, a second Trump presidency, to try and get things back on track and to take us out of the chaos of the Biden years. President Trump had indicated that previously, prior to his surviving an assassination attempt, the goal was to have a speech that would be really aggressive, going after Joe Biden in all of the ways you might expect. The speech's tenor has changed quite a bit since President Trump survived that assassination attempt this weekend. And I look forward to seeing what the final product is tomorrow night. One of the great additions to this convention was the inclusion of, and this is not a new thing, President Trump has quite routinely included what they're referring to as everyday Americans. Everyday Americans. These are Americans who have been affected by the current state of the country and Joe Biden's leadership, if you can call it that. And among them is a mother by the name of Ann Fundner, who spoke last night. Her 15-year-old son died in 2022. He had taken a pill, I believe in history it was just a recreational drug he was taking that was laced with fentanyl. And it killed him. And she had a very emotional address last night. I want to play a little bit of it for you. And she was one of several who really made me a little misty as I'm listening to all this. Take a listen.
We had family dinners and barbecues at the beach. And like most teenagers, Weston wanted to fit in. And in a moment of peer pressure, he tried something that someone gave to him, and it took my baby's life. We did everything right. I had those conversations with him, and fentanyl still found my son. And on February 27th, 2022, our lives were shattered, and our baby was gone. This was not an overdose, it was a poisoning. His whole future, everything we ever wanted for him was ripped away in an instant. And Joe Biden does nothing. I hold Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the borders are, what a joke, and Gavin Newsom and every Democrat who supports open borders responsible for the death of my son.
Very long, sustained applause for her last night. Just heartbreaking to hear her story. And the crowd, of course, horrified by what they were hearing and what they know about the state of our country right now under Biden. She made an important distinction there. She said it wasn't an overdose. This was a poisoning. This is chemical warfare, is what we're witnessing. The Americans, the nearly 100,000 Americans who are dying due to fentanyl each year, so many of them are dying not due to overdosing on what they thought they took a small amount, they took too much, and it killed them off. They didn't have. It used to be this opioid crisis started with a lot of people who were addicted to opioids who kept looking for, bigger and bigger highs, bringing them to the deadliness of fentanyl. No, there's a lot of people like Ann's son, young people especially, who are being killed taking recreational drugs. They just take one. They have a friend says, here, take this, like a Percocet or whatever they think it is. They take it and they don't realize it's laced with fentanyl. And that's a product of the cartels. Those are the cartels who are doing that south of our border. Our border being wide open is how all of this is getting in, all of this poison. And it's China who is energizing this entire illicit industry. China is killing our people. So this is what we're seeing here is a combo of the Chinese Communist Party and the Mexican cartels committing chemical warfare against the United States, killing American citizens. And Joe Biden has allowed that to happen. He's enabled it. He's trafficking humans deep into our country. He's got the Border Patrol not on stopping drugs, but instead on processing people in. And as a result, more and more of this poison is getting in. Ann Fundner also said, quite tragically, it's too late for her son, but there's a reason she's speaking now.
It's too late for my son, Weston. Say his name, Joe Biden. Weston. Thank you. Thank you.
The crowd chanting.
But we can change this for your children. We need President Trump back to save the lives of our kids. Thank you. Thank you. God bless America.
Thank you and God bless America. The crowd chanting her son's name. Weston, Weston, Weston. She wasn't alone last night. She was also joined by a woman by the name of Madeline Brame. A woman with a lot of energy and another tragic story. Madeline Brame has a son who was killed in New York City. He's a veteran. His name is Sergeant Hassan Correa. And she talked about how he'd been at war. He'd been shot at by the Taliban. And here we are in New York City, and he's killed in the United States. Listen to this.
My son, Sergeant Hassan Correa, an Afghanistan War retired veteran. He received enemy fire from the Taliban, only to be murdered with a knife on the streets of New York City. The 4 assailants responsible for his death initially were facing justice, but that changed when District Attorney Alvin Bragg was elected. Suddenly, 2 of the homicidal maniacs responsible for my son's death had their gang assault and murder charges completely dismissed. One of them received 14 months time served. Alvin Bragg charged her with assault with a shoe. And another one was sentenced to 7 years. I later learned that Alvin Bragg often dismisses and reduces dangerous criminals. He wants to clear the jails and return violent felons onto our streets every day. The injustice was devastating for me and my family. I don't want anyone else to experience the senseless pain that many other victims across this United States of America have to live with every day. So I decided to use the voice that God gave me to be the voice for the voiceless across America.
I'm telling you, you can't watch this woman, you can't listen to her without instantly falling in love with her. And she called all of these idiots out by name, these ghouls, whether it was Alvin Bragg in New York or Kim Fox in Chicago or Carlson in L.A. One after the other, she just ripped into them in an epic speech. And she asked the crowd, are you with me?
Poor and neglected communities like mine are suffering. And who else in here is sick and tired of being sick and tired?
She went on and she said, you know who's causing all these problems? Democrats.
The Democratic Party that poor minorities have been loyal to for decades, including myself, all right? They betrayed us. They stabbed us in the back. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who claim to represent us, have abandoned us. They neglected the poor minority communities across America.
At best, they've neglected them. At worst, they've savaged them. And that's unfortunately what we're... A jammed call board today as everyone wants to weigh in on everything we're finding out about what happened Saturday as President Trump was shot by a man on a roof with a clear line of sight and no meaningful protection whatsoever. Let's bring in Peggy from North Carolina, line 4. Peggy, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Oh, hi, Vince. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Enjoying your show.
Thank you.
Real quick on the you and Tony are obviously not golfers. Almost every golfer has a rangefinder, so just having a rangefinder itself may not be an indication that you're a criminal. But that. So my point about Cheadle was, I don't understand why the Democrats aren't angry at Cheadle and calling for her head. Had she done her job, had the Secret Service done their job, who would be the hero right now? Biden. Biden would have saved Trump's life. He'd be the bigger man. He'd be. It's ironic how this could have been the other way around, and they don't even seem to see it that way. I mean, they should call for her head. It was too dangerous what happened, but also politically, it would have been so much better for them if they just did their job.
What do you make, Peggy, of Biden deciding to pretend to say he's still got confidence in her? By the way, if I'm Joe Biden, why would I have confidence in her? She's responsible for your life too.
What I make of that is they have to stand by this DEI agenda.
Yes.
They have to literally live and die by that DEI.
You're totally right. You're totally right. Peggy, that's such a smart point. Yeah, that's more important to them than keeping anybody safe, especially their political opponent, Trump. What do they care about him? They keep trying to throw him in jail. They don't care about him in the slightest. Justin calling in from Wilmington, North Carolina as well. The North Carolina callers, line 5. Hello, Justin. Thank you for waiting. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. A little bit different topic, but it keeps coming up. The Democrats keep saying they're trying to defend democracy and protect democracy, and Trump is a threat to democracy.
Exactly.
Well, they've obviously changed the meaning of the word democracy. It's what they're doing is propaganda, it's deception, it's lies, and the only thing they're trying to protect is their power.
Exactly.
It's a globalist regime. You need to hear that. Thank you.
Amen. That's why I say it with a lot of frequency and sometimes too much volume. Thank you, Justin. Good to hear from you all the way from Wilmington. Beautiful Wilmington, North Carolina. Can't be any hotter than here, though, right now. It's crazy how hot it is. Stay with us. We've got a lot of developments here. All these senators just talked to the Biden administration, which means we'll have more leaks about the Secret Service's many failures. That's ahead. The great one, Mark Levin, up next.